Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. The full champion roadmap is finally out, though for those of you who were in the comments on the last video, literally an hour after I post Friday's video, I find a translation of that post on the League of Legends subreddit, so I guess we didn't need to go through all that speculation when we did have some of the information there. I guess that's on me, but we've got it now in English, so we can finally delve into it, and honestly, this is okay because the translations tend to be more generalist with their words, and they're just designed to convey meaning rather than subtext. For example, at the very end of that post, there was a reference to the next champion, the champion towards the end of this year, as being a member of the strongest race on Runeterra, but that ended up not being the case at all. So there were a lot of people who were like, oh, what does this mean? Does that mean Vestaya Shirei? Does that mean a Celestial? You know, does this mean Syndra? What could this possibly convey? And essentially that ended up not being relevant to the discussion at all. So in that regard, it was definitely worth it to wait for the full trailer to come out here, for the full roadmap to come out here, so we can actually take a look at what the real words are, especially because Riot tends to be very specific with what they choose to say in these kinds of posts. So either way, doesn't matter too much. Let's go ahead and hop right into it and talk about a little bit more about this champion roadmap now that we actually know what it says. First up, the Raccoon Nurse. I couldn't figure out what that was. It is definitely a part of the Dr. Mundo base splash, I would say. The Raccoon Nurse to go along with the Dr. Mundo, which is kind of hilarious, especially when you consider Raccoon's little fingers rooting around your ribcage to help Dr. Mundo with his surgery. So that's kind of funny. Mundo does sound a little bit smarter than I expected as well in the audio clips that they've linked, but he still sounds very Mundo-y, so I guess I can't complain at the end of the day. I do think that the rework is going to be very exciting to see from a couple of standpoints, so I can't wait to see where that's at. But let's go ahead and talk about the stuff that we can't really see through visuals. Already we talked about Mundo and Udyr, and really there wasn't that much information to be gained about them other than where they're at in their respective VGUs. Next up is actually going to be the Sentinel champion, and this was a big deal, as maybe work from home is finally getting to Riot. Obviously, Udyr was reworked at the beginning of this year, or was voted into rework candidacy at the beginning of the year, but he's been pushed all the way back to next year, and now they've been swapping around the positions of our newest champions. The Sentinel Marksman is now the next champion out, and the mid lane mage will be released after them. So maybe this isn't entirely fair to put this all on COVID. It's just how game development works, and given that the mid lane champion was converted from an artillery mage to a regular mage, it kind of makes sense for Riot to say, then we need to take this champion back to the lab for a little bit more time, so we'll release the Sentinel instead. It also means that the delay between champions may be a little bit longer than we're expecting. Ordinarily, we sort of have a patch on and then a patch off, and we tend to get a champion about once every couple of months here, so it may be a little bit longer out, but I do have faith that Riot will still get all of the champions out this year. Either way, let's go ahead and talk about the Sentinel as they are our next release. Now, the Sentinel champion is a marksman, but they are also designed to be a mid lane marksman. Now, this is a little concerning to me and feels a little bit bad to me, as Riot make the argument essentially that they say we already have mid lane marksmen, yes, but they weren't designed for mid laning and with mid lane sort of attributes in mind, which I think is a little disingenuous to say. They sort of cite things that, like roaming and dueling potential. Well, Lucian has great dueling, Tristana has great dueling, Corki has the package, which makes him great at roaming. I sort of don't understand the opinion of Riot, shall we say, that the mid lane AD carry needs to have these particular traits in order to be playable. The other reason I think this is concerning is that we already have these mid lane marksmen, and they tend to be overbearing at best or unplayable at worst. When Lucian and Tristana are strong mid lane, they tend to just utterly annihilate a lot of conventional mid lane champions, and Corki was in a similar space, especially when he's been strong. I think he's sort of been out of the meta for a long period of time, but either way, it is a little concerning to me. I'm not a big fan of this decision to release mid lane marksman, especially when you consider the fact that AD carries are still the only class of champion in the game that is mandatory in every single game. A bot lane champion is, in, I would say, 98% of games, a marksman. Which then means, why do we need to have marksmen playable in other lanes? Especially when we already have marksmen that are playable in every lane. We have the aforementioned mid lane marksmen. We have things like Quinn that you can play top, Kindra that you can play in the jungle. We even have a support AD carry whose name is Senna, right? So like if you wanted to do something like a fasting Senna with a Tahm Kench or another tank, like that's totally an option you can do. So I guess I just don't understand why we needed a mid lane marksman specifically. It feels more like Riot want all the Sentinels to be playable on the same team. They don't want to leave anybody out. I still feel like you could have just then said, Lucian, you're the mid lane marksman, and we run this new Sentinel in the bot lane, but Either way, I might be overthinking a little bit, I might be getting a little bit too concerned, but I am thinking of when Riot tried to put classes of champions in places they don't normally get played, such as the Assassin support Pyke or the support AD carry Senna, and how difficult they've been to get balanced in every position, and even at the position they're supposed to be played at. So either way, I'm a little concerned about it, but let's talk a little bit more about them, as they are an AD carry specifically designed for mid lane, which may be beneficial as they can be appropriately balanced for mid lane, as opposed to needing to be played in their base lane on top of this other lane that they're sort of poaching. So either way. Now, Riot specifically said that the champion is going to be swinging onto the rift, and this is paired with an image of a grappling hook, so very clearly this champion is going to be using that grappling hook for mobility, probably like Camille Hookshot, or maybe with grappling champions and either pulling them closer or potentially, pulling themselves towards them in order to play a bit more of like an aggressive playstyle, as with like Kai'Sa are or something along those lines. Could be interesting. And since they were intentionally designed with roaming patterns, I could definitely see this ability having utility outside of lane to let them grapple through the jungle or grapple down the river in order to make some roaming plays happen. So some potential here. They've also paired the champion with Shurima artwork and with sort of black mist encroaching on Shurima, so that means that this new champion may either be Shuriman by birth or just hanging out there right now, and this is where Lucian and Senna will meet up with him. So either way, interesting to see where this champion is going to end up. I do have a little bit of hope for what Riot will end up doing with this champion, my sort of balance concerns aside. The mid lane mage, meanwhile, now they were delayed, but they're also no longer an artillery mage. They were moved to a regular mage. I know I talked about that a little bit. This is not surprising, given that we know that they were delayed. Riot did need to take this champion back to the lab to make sure that they could balance it out. And Riot also said they need new tech to visually sell her source of power. We do know it's a she now, which again sort of posits that maybe it's Yumi's owner, but we've already been baited once this year already with Gwen pretending to be Isolde, and we all thought she was Isolde, and then she ended up not being. So either way, maybe that's not going to be the case at all, but either way, it's going to be interesting to see how this champion works. We still know that they're sort of a gloomy champion who hates the hyperactive champions around them, so I could see potentially having abilities that slow or ground nearby enemy champions in order to hold them at bay and force them to stop dashing around, which would be an interesting place for this champion to work at as is. So kind of excited to see where this champion ends up taken, but we definitely have less room for speculation about this champion versus the other, so we'll have to see. This champion is also going to be playing a big part in the Viego storyline, which I'm not quite sure how. That seems like sort of a weird thing for Viego to have beef with this Yordle, or for this Yordle to have beef with Viego, so either way, I'm sort of curious to see what Riot are going to do with this champion, but it's going to be another sort of lighthearted champion, I have to think, so kind of excited to see where that is, as we've gotten a lot of serious champions this year already, so we could definitely use some more lightheartedness alongside the Mundo VGU. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about the next champion that will be coming out later this year. This is not the mage or the Sentinel marksman. This is our next marksman, who will this time be released in the bot lane. Now, this is where the translation errors came in, as they are from the most tenacious region, not the strongest race. There's a big difference here, but either way, the most tenacious region definitely applies to Zaun here. I think when you look at all the natural and man-made disasters and enemies that are running around Zaun, you need to be really tenacious to survive there. So that's definitely a reference to Zaun. It also potentially is a hint at this champion's kit. Riot also mentioned the next leg of the year, which potentially means this champion could be another kickboxer like Camille, or maybe a champion with an emphasis on mobility. We've already kind of talked about tenacious and being able to keep going no matter the odds, and electrifying, which is no surprise since we could guess that they're a lightning-based champion. I could maybe see this as sort of a quick-moving lightning blaster artillery sort of AD carry type champion who either has tenacity or some CC immunity sort of built in, and the ability to just sort of run you down and train you down with auto attacks, as most AD carries do. I don't know, I'm speculating here, but again, these sort of very careful word choices are things that Riot always does in these sort of posts. So next leg, I think, is an obvious reference to something, as is the most tenacious region. So either way, we'll see where it goes, but we don't have a lot yet. Obviously, we'll get more probably after the Mundo VGU and our next champion on this one in particular, so excited to see where they end up. And that's really it for me today, guys. There's no reason to talk about Udyr. I've already kind of covered everything Udyr is about. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys did find this useful after last week's video, where I kind of speculated a whole bunch, and now we have the actual information. I will have the full article linked down in the description below as well, if you guys want to check it out for yourself. And that's going to be it, guys. Let me know what you think of any of this down in the comments section below, especially if you're really excited for a mid lane AD carry. If you think that's a cool thing, let me know. I think it's kind of silly, but hey, that's just one man's opinion. So like I said, let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.